There's two people who I think right now are the center of discussion. And you remember yesterday, I sort of brought up this idea of why does it feel like the 49er fan base needs to declare, this is almost like a Shaq Kobe thing. For a while when you were a Laker fan, were you a Shaq person or are you a Kobe person? Are you an offense person or a defense person when it comes to who you're going to support or who you're going to blame with this 49er team? I'm as guilty as anyone. I have definitely been pointing the finger more at the defense than the offense, and there are fair points in the other direction. But I think there are two people who are the poster people for those two sides. Neither of them are Kyle Shanahan, by the way. The poster man for the defense is Steve Wilks, and the poster man for the offense is Brock Purdy. And I don't think that that's fair for either one of them. But here's one thing that I do hope is the case. If you go back through the last few years when the 49ers ended up really good and ended up in the NFC title game, each year they've had a 2 to 3 game window where the defense just kind of stunk. And then they figured it out. So maybe this is that. I have my concerns because I think that there were warts prior to this 3 games losing streak. The Rams game was one piece of evidence. There were other small pieces of evidence. Nick Bosa's sack total, what have you. But if you do go back to last year and you remember what they looked like in Atlanta, followed by what they looked like when they got home and Patrick Mahomes came to town and busted 40-something on them with ease. If you go back to that window, you're like, gosh, this defense that we were so happy with at the end of the year for a 2 to 3 week stretch looked like crap. And then they snapped out of it. Usually it's coming out of the bye in some way, shape, or form. I hope history repeats itself. And I think that there is a rational opinion that it will.
And the rational opinion's based on Steve Wilks going from the booth to the sideline?
No, the rational opinion is based on this defense has a ton of good players, and that usually wins out in the end.
Yeah, you would figure.
Yeah.
But, I mean, good players can have mediocre years or bad years. And
yeah.
I don't think that Chase Young is going to go out there and play 60 snaps. And from what I've heard, he's looking at maybe 35, maybe 40 snaps.
You've heard that where and why? I mean, it's not like
multiple reports.
It's not like he's, you know what I mean? Like he's in shape.
Well, the majority of these guys don't play more than 75% anyway.
Right.
They like to rotate their guys. So he comes in, and I don't think that he immediately gets 80% of the snaps. They rotate guys, and he's new to the defense. It's a different scheme. You have Randy Gregory, and you're going to, try to spot other guys in his place. I mean, if he plays more than that, I'd be happy to see it, but I don't expect him to come in and hit the ground running and get 2 or 3 sacks.
I'll tell you why I want him to play more, a higher percentage than that, because I think it means the Niners are ahead. Because if Jacksonville,
more pass rush
Jacksonville is in a passing situation, you're going to see more Chase Young, and I hope that Jacksonville's in a passing situation because that means the 49ers have the lead in the second half. So maybe that's why I'm hoping to see him more than 30 snaps out there.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be a big deal. I really do. I think that acquisition is going to change the defense. I'm not saying any one thing is the magic pill, but I do think that Chase Young, I think we're going to feel this on Sunday.
Well, if Chase Young comes in and he plays a lot and the defense doesn't get better, then we're all going to rush to Steve Wilks and say, well, it's got to be your fault because you have 2 first-rounders now, plus Eric Armstead, first-rounder, Javon Hargrave, who's, getting an 8-figure salary, and Fred Warner, an all-pro. How can these guys not be wrecking games? You have the best defense in terms of talent, so it's got to be Steve Wilks' fault, right?
Well, you're right.
I'm being a little sarcastic because the players play. They have to go out there and make plays.
I know, but these players have played, and that's my issue with this is not to blame Steve Wilks. I want to see how the season plays out. I don't think he's going anywhere, nor should he. But I do think there is and whether it's a simplistic thought or not, I don't think we can ask fans to have any more of a thought than something simplistic. We're not there.
Right.
We're not game planning. We don't know how the scheme works. We just look at this and we go, so I'm supposed to believe that all of these really good players just stop playing well all at the same time? That doesn't seem plausible. So it has to mean on some level that the right leg and the left leg aren't walking together. And whether it's fair or not, that is Steve's responsibility. That's his responsibility. Who's the cat's name? Lucas will know. He left. The defensive coordinator for the USC Trojans, Alex Grinch. He got fired this week. His players have got to be not listening or not executing. There was a play against Washington.
Well, that defense has been terrible all year. So.
Yeah. And
is it Grinch's fault?
He got fired.
Right. But is it his fault?
Probably not.
We can scapegoat anyone we want. We can fire Steve Wilks.
But that's what I'm getting at. That's the role. When you take a leadership role, okay, Gabe Kapler, it's not your fault that Carlos Correa is a twin, but you're fired. And I'm not saying he shouldn't have been fired. I'm simply saying that's the way this stuff works. And so if a collection of great players suddenly stops playing well, where is it that the fan is supposed to look? You're right. It will not all be Steve Wilks' fault. But you damn well better believe that that's where a lot of the pointing will go. Some of it will go even higher than that. Because whether Kyle Shanahan is an offensive guy or a defensive guy, he's in charge.
Well, he was the one who pointed the finger there in the first place.
He did.
And none of us would have been talking about Steve Wilks in the way that we're talking about Steve Wilks if it wasn't for Kyle Shanahan saying it was a bad call and he knows it.
It's a good point.
Because, as much as we all watch football and we watch the games 3 times and we all digest it and we read all the blogs and all the assessments and all the everything about football, none of us would have been that geared up about Steve Wilks if it wasn't for Kyle Shanahan.
No, although I think even before he came to the microphone, I do think the fans were smart enough to go, what the hell was that? Like, you said it in the moment. I said it in the moment. Sure, Charvarius could have caught the ball, should have caught the ball, but you don't do that. You don't put a DB on an island with 16 seconds left to go in the half. You just don't do that. And I don't know if he lost track of time or whatever. I think he has accepted what everyone has said about that perfectly. I think he has said all the right things. He has set all the right tone. I think Kyle went a little overboard and lost himself with the comment that he made 3 days later. That's still very head-scratching and surprising to me. But that ramped it up. That ramped the dialogue up for sure.
No doubt.
For sure.
Yeah, and I think that's where we sit now, where you get Chase Young, and now Steve Wilks come down from the sideline, and if you go into Jacksonville and you lose 24-23, or maybe you lose 35-34.
That's a problem.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
And it's a problem because now Steve Wilks came down from the booth and, oh, geez, that didn't work, so now what do we do?
Yeah.
It's not because the players didn't tackle or because Nick Bosa is all of a sudden now he's got this fat wallet and he missed training camp and maybe he's not having a good year because he's a little bit softer than he should be.
You're allowed to say that.
But we're going to point at Steve Wilks.
Well, no, you can point wherever you want to point if that happens.
I point at the players.
I don't
myself.
think, and that's fine.
Yeah.
That's completely fair. But all I'm expressing is that I think it's hard to ask a fan to believe that a bunch of really high-priced, really proven defensive players just all of a sudden don't know how to play anymore.
But
that's really hard for people to believe.
It is, but just real quick, let's think about the Golden State Warriors last year.
Okay.
All these high-priced, like elite-level champion proven players, all of a sudden, they didn't play great. And why was that? Was it because of Ron Adams, the defensive coordinator?
No.
Was it because Steve Kerr? Was it because Jordan Poole or Draymond Green? It was because the players didn't play well enough.
Well, but why didn't they play well enough? There was a reason.
Correct.
There were a bunch of reasons.
Right, but nobody was pointing toward Bruce Frazier. You know, Bruce in the pregame shoot-around wasn't giving me crisp enough passes.
And nor should they, because that didn't make sense in that environment, although...
And I'm being a little sarcastic.
I know you are, but you did hear people talk about how Mike Brown wasn't on the team anymore.
For sure.
You're like, wait a minute, he was a defensive guy, and they're not playing defense anymore. I wonder if Mike Brown...
Right.
That's all we're left to do. We're left to sort of wonder, what is it? And I do think it's hard to ask fans to think all of these players who we've watched play well suddenly don't play well.
Yeah.
And is there an unfair amount of responsibility that goes to leadership coaches? Yep. And they know that when they take the job.
And at the end of it, the coach can be amazing and the players cannot play well. And
that's a wrap.
And that's a wrap. Or the coach can be awful and the players can be amazing. And, it
also
just.
true.
Right. So you never know where to lay the blame. Bottom line, players have to make plays.